Want to welcome, Addison Reed Holmes here. I would first probably qualify you, um, you know, dancer, student, entrepreneur, performer. How do we go back? Take us through, because when I read your bio, it was so unique, and I think probably very unique to the dance world, and espouses so much of kind of the ICL tenets. And the way that we structure our webinars is usually following a trajectory of someone, who's accomplished a lot in their field, but also walking through, you know, how they form their passion, how it became a purpose, because there's a big difference between passion and purpose, and then how to create that process that you were able to follow to excel, and then gaining perspective. How did it then translate into business career, into utilizing what you love later on, not through college, through life, and then making it your own. How do you persevere, because it's never an easy path. So I think we just want to start with the beginning, and a little bit about your background and how you developed this passion for dance, and where did it all begin.
Absolutely. So I started at a classical ballet school. We did RAD, which is Royal Academy of Dance, which is hundreds of years old syllabus out of London, England. And I had an amazing mother-daughter pair as my teachers, and they were classical ballet dancers. My older teacher danced for the Royal Ballet, and so I had very structured, disciplined ballet, but they also were genius enough to bring in Broadway musical theater teachers for us. They brought in commercial teachers for us. We did, tap dancing. We did Alan Sherfield, jazz lyrical. So I was able to be really hungry for lots of genres while having my very disciplined ballet background. And I feel like that is, becoming more of a trend with these kids that we're seeing, like from the Rock School, from Stars down in Miami. We're seeing these kids that have such an amazing classical ballet foundation, but they're bringing in contemporary. They're bringing in this, hunger to go dance on Broadway. So I was fortunate enough to have that background. At age 15, I started dancing professionally for Fort Worth Dallas Ballet, and then in turn, they turned into Texas Ballet Theater. So I danced for a professional ballet company at a very young age, and I was balancing public school life, which was very difficult because I was in honors classes and academics were important to me. And that became stressful just to balance everything. I also had an actress mother and a musician for a father. And through my mom, I acted from a very young age. I was in plays with Nick Stahl when I was little. I was in commercials. I was in industrials. So I had that acting side at the same time. So I loved that entertainment life. I was hungry to perform on stage. I'm still that way. Get me on stage and I'm like so excited for the audience and to just share that passion. From there, I did want to continue dancing professionally, but I also wanted to go to university. I wanted just to have that academic side. I wanted to study dance as well as corporate communications and public affairs, which is basically PR, because I wanted to be able to package myself and send my own career out. So I was lucky that I had artist parents, and they wanted me to go dance, but they also were like, okay, well, let's get some loans out for you and go to university. And I was doing all of that at the same time. I finished early and I moved to LA, and I worked commercially, and I worked for ballet companies, and then I worked for some equity musical theater, and I went back and forth between LA and New York. I lived in New York 3 different times, all over New York City and Brooklyn, and just worked and worked and worked, from everything from music videos, Eminem, McDonald's commercials, classical ballet, contemporary ballet, background dancer in Europe for Natasha Bedingfield, just everything I could get my hands on. I was doing. At the same time, I really have a passion for teaching because I just have a nurturing side to me, mama bird side to me. And I just had such a joyous time performing. I wanted kids to have a mentor, to have a teacher that really wanted to be on their side, still disciplined, still we have to learn things the correct way and have accountability. But I really wanted them to have someone who was excited for their career because I felt good in my career. So I didn't have that resentment or that like longing that I didn't do something, and pushing that on a child. I had just that comfortableness with my own career that I could get excited for a child's career. So, I started teaching kind of just here and there on like a Saturday morning, even back in college. So I've been teaching for 20 years, and it's just a huge passion for me to teach. I get so excited to see these kids grow and choreograph on them and create. At the same time, I still love performing. I still have an agent and love acting. And, you can perform into your 70s, 80s. So I just see it as this huge career that keeps on growing because there's room for all of us to grow. So if I get excited about what I'm doing and I can share that with my kids, in turn with that, I judged for a very long time for different conventions and competitions, and got into the commercial world as well there. And I started seeing how these events worked, and I was like, there's not a commercial concert dance style convention, so why don't we start one? So it's that thing of like you'll only regret what you don't go for. And to 2019 we started Icon, and it's been such a whirlwind, with the pandemic, but we've been successful and we're so excited. We have 9 cities this year, which is big for us coming out of the past 2 years of crazy COVID. So we're so excited. We're a little unique that we have over 10 hours of classes that include ballet, contemporary, and musical theater. And then within that, the kids also learn choreography and they perform in a closing gala. And we have professional dancers and professional companies and professional musicians. We've had cellists and pianists come perform with them. So we do a whole closing show. So they feel like they're leaving the weekend with something more than, oh, I didn't win, or I won, this scholarship, or my friend won this scholarship. So the feeling they leave with is we all performed together. And just that, I know that carries more with you, those experiences and
And
those
community, right?
events.
You're
Yeah.
building a community.
Yeah.
And so how important, I want to touch on all those, by that you just covered.
There's a lot.
No, but I want to go back to that first stirring of a passion, because when you take a passion and make it your purpose, that's a huge step, right? I mean, I love music, I love dance. I couldn't have done it. I chose tennis, and the amount of dedication that it takes. I think in today's world, it's sort of, when you're young, you just do it because you love it. But at some point, there's that decision that says, look, I'm going to have to sacrifice. And a big issue that I always found was for athletes, and dancers are incredible athletes, is that decision of, okay, I'm going to have to give up. School's going to be tough. Time becomes your biggest enemy, right? There's just not enough time
Absolutely.
today.
Yeah.
So if you go back to young, I mean, to turn professional at 15 means that you started way before that, so maybe take us back earlier, sort of 12-year-old, what was that, 12 to 16,
Yeah.
your schedule, and when did you know that it's like, okay, this isn't just like fun for me, like this is my purpose?
12 really was the turning point. So age 7, I went to the big ballet school, and my teachers told my mom we got her just in time. Like, and my mom was like, she's first grade, we got her just in time to train her the right way.
So
But really,
my son who's turning 6, I got
I
it.
know.
He's on that borderline. Okay.
Yeah. So, but really age 11, 12, because I started going to summer intensives. So summer intensives become very competitive to get into the right intensive. You go 3 to 5 weeks to 6 weeks on your own. And that was a huge turning point for me because, being 11, going away to New York City for 5 weeks on my own, fly, at that time you could fly alone as a kid. And just, I was like, I love it. Like, this is all I want to do. I would come home, I would take the open adult, any class I could take, like open adult beginning ballet class. and do, make everything harder. And like anything I could get my hands on, I wanted to do. I was making up dances in the backyard and writing them down and trying to record them. And, you kind of, it is that switch that's flipped, and no one can make you do that. It's just, I think it's innate. I think you're born, I do. I think it's a gift from God. And then you have that drive to really go for it.
So what were some of those obstacles? Because it's a different world now. I mean, back then, you and I talked earlier, we didn't have that opportunity to say, wow, I could go to an online school and get the same
Right.
benefits. Because back then you just had to grind and figure it out.
Right.
And I think what was it that propelled you? How did you balance a schedule? And what would something like an ICL have done for you if you could go back, currently you're that 12, 13-year-old, because we started in sixth grade. Like what would have been that turning point if you're a parent that's like, okay, my child is good enough, wants to dedicate themselves, but I'm worried about, filling time or going to school online.
Right.
What do you think that process would have been for you now? Or how
I
did
see it. Yeah, ICL would have been life changing for me because I could have traveled more and I could have still had that academics I wanted to have, but organized it on the road. And my mom could have taken me. We were so worried about balancing school. And back then, you really did get in trouble. If you missed, I remember being one semester being really close to, I think it's like you can only miss 7 days or 10 days a semester. So something like ICL, we could have taken so many more opportunities back then if I had been in this kind of amazing program. And I think that, I do look at, my kids that are have that option now with a little bit of envy because they are able to really it's not a choice, oh, academics or not. It's like, no, I can have both and I can structure it. And you're also not then put into this like cookie cutter
Mhm.
world, which really they're doing research and they're finding out that that's not how every kid learns and that's not how every kid grows. And it is detrimental to some students. Someone like my husband would have benefited from this program as well with sports because he was not a sit at the desk, be yelled at. He would have flourished with something like this as well. So I think it will help cater to different students. And I think it takes a little more creativeness in a program like this to really blossom artists and athletes as well.
So I think that it leads into saying there's a great book called The Athlete Gene, and I think it goes across dedicating yourself to anything and I don't know how it applies to dance, but I'm sure it's the same. Is there's a physical side in training, but there's definitely a huge mental side, right? I
Right.
mean, there's a massive amount, and so a school, so we teach the classes like performance psychology, like how do you
Wow.
calm those nerves? How do you what did you have that back then, or how did you get to that point where, because to become a professional at 15, I mean, and it's different than an athlete. Like I was still playing junior tournaments. Yes, I was on a pathway, but you actually were like, I am a professional in this field
Right.
at 15 years old. Did you ever have any of that like mental training, or how did that come about?
No, it was like sink or swim. And I remember being 15, thrown into the room of all the adults. And we're talking about like 28, 30-year olds too, thrown into the dressing room, just this new world of like, and they're yelling at you and you're running backstage and they're screaming at you what to do. And it would have been so nice to have that support because I felt a little bit alone too, thrown into, this adult world. And I do tell my students that too, as a dancer, you are expected at a very young age to be mature. I have 9 to 10-year olds that I teach that I expect so much more out of them maturity wise than I even do my own 9-year-old son. And I've talked to them about that. I'll say, look, I have a son your age, but I expect more out of you because you're a dancer, you're a role model, you're going on television. I have a lot of industry working kids. You're on social media and people are looking up to you. So you kind of can't do certain things and you have to uphold yourself. So just to have even like professional, like you're saying, psychology, just professional support because the dance industry can get very strange as far as, yeah, you're thrown into adult situations a lot of times. And so, I mean, how amazing to have that kind of mental health support.
And that's such a key point. I think we're living in an age where that, because the social emotional learning that we hear about, pervading sort of normal society is sort of magnified, but gets almost forgotten at these high performing, youth. And
Right.
there's a huge burnout rate. I can only imagine, I
Yeah.
mean, how tough that is. So, you know, to have, I guess what we try to focus on is not, it's how do you blend your academics with what you're passionate about. So how does dance relate? So that, at 15, did you probably know even how the business of the industry works? So we teach classes like the business of sport, or like how
Right.
does business here and work? What
Oh,
would that have been?
absolutely not. If I had had someone, I was a little lucky that I had a mom in a similar industry because she was an actress. And so she knew equity contracts and she knew SAG. So I had a little bit of that. But if I had a professional, person, class really sitting down with me, talking to me about union rates, talking to me about contracts and about after houses. And, there's so many things that no one sets you up for. So, like you were saying, your body is being trained the correct way and what to do. But these classes, these extra classes to support the athlete, no, I didn't get that at all, and we didn't even have access to many things online to even try to learn about. And now they have so much access to online that I think it's swung the other way, that it's hard to get some real solid information. So, to have a professional person to help that side, that entrepreneur side, because as a dancer, a lot of times, even with an agent, even if you're in a professional company, you still are your own advocate. You still have to navigate your own career path. And the difference between, say, a gymnast or even a figure skater than a dancer is our longevity of career can be really long. You can dance even on point into your 40s. We know a lot of professional dancers. Alessandra Ferry just did her last performance at age 52 on point. So
Wow.
if you really do have that mental health, like you're saying, that social emotional support, and you have the business side knowledge, I mean, we're talking about, and you start at 15 and go to 40, go to 50. I mean, huge career. So you have to have that support. And I know for myself, a lot of my peers that also did not have that, severe burnout. And they were more technically talented than even I was, but just severe burnout because they didn't have that backing and that support and that knowledge of how do I navigate this career more than just my body physically doing it.
And that's hard because you always wonder where does it fall between, it's sort of like, all right, you're in school. So traditionally it's like, all right, the school is just to give you your math science, your what do you
Right.
need to graduate, to get the diploma. And then your training is like, hey, how can we maximize your potential for your body? But I think mixing the idea, I mean, ICL's background as a nonprofit is the Institute for Civic Leadership. Because a lot of times, you talked about wanting to teach and give back. And there is that feeling of, you know, in all sports, they talk about the pyramid of physical, mental, emotional, and academic are all part of that pyramid. So the emotional wear and tear, how does it combine? Like, if you're so focused on wanting to be a professional, but you think that that just means I need to perform at my best, not
Right.
that my brain, this is your biggest muscle. And so, if your brain is how, have you seen programs that, and I guess part of the reason maybe this goes into your next of when you made it your purpose and you achieved this professional dance world and realized there are a lot of holes in it. So, how did you create a process for yourself? Because you weren't pushed on the academic side, you did a lot of self-motivation. So, how did you create that process of somehow knowing that you needed to work on your brain, and how you knew how did that happen at 15, and what was
Yeah.
the process that you set up?
And this was difficult as well. So my older teacher, I mean, just looked at her like a family member to me. She began, now we know, early stages of Alzheimer's. So I started losing her as a mentor kind of when I did need her the most. And so I did feel, and I would talk to my mom, and she only knew acting side, but I was like, I feel so lost because I'm losing my mentor. She's, losing her battle with Alzheimer's. And I do feel lost. And there wasn't a program for me to really guide me. And so I think that is why I became the type of educator I am today. And I'm very honest and supportive with my students. And I really do think about, all the aspects of the industry that they need. I just, oh, can I go back in time and you start ICL when you're 12?
Yeah, I feel the same. I always say that I feel very selfish that, people ask why I founded it. I said, well, I wish it's exactly
Yeah,
what I wish I had, because I think later when you gain, and that's the next pillar after process is perspective. And so when you gain perspective, all of a sudden, in my sport, it took me till what I was done in my 30s to be like, oh my God, wait, tennis is math. Like,
right,
it's physics, it relates. Why didn't someone show me how it related? Or there's more than just being on the court. There's a whole business that I can be part of. And so, you know, I guess as we're training youth, and it's amazing that are a champion in your field, as a professional, able to make a living, and then also giving back in that service capacity while being an entrepreneur. It's, I guess that leads into that perspective of, when did it click that you kind of, had the confidence to go from a professional route to saying, what, I'm going to get, you're still front of house, but, behind the scenes, and actually, was it that you wanted to create something that you didn't have? Or, how did you feel confident on the business side? I mean, you're
right.
starting a business.
Right. I think I wanted to create something that I knew was purposeful and for the right reasons. So I wanted to create something and create a safe space for kids. I wanted to create something that I knew they could flourish and that I wasn't doing to mirror my ego at all. That I was excited to have something for them to grow, and yeah, a little bit of like, this is the type of event I would want. And this is the type of, culture and nature of the environment that I would want. And so a little bit in a control freak way, I'm looking around and I'm like, I don't see a program quite like this in my genre that's a little more intimate, that's a little more, supportive of just that concert dance career. Like, let's just do it. And I want to, be behind the scenes a little bit as much as I love being in front of the camera and in front of everyone. Like, let's see how this could work and fulfill that side of, yeah, I would have loved a program like this.
So it's so interesting. And I want to also make this very interactive. So the people that are here, type in your questions. We want to bring you up to be able to ask Addison. I think that, there's a great question that I was going to lead into, but I'd love to bring Fatima if she wants to come up and ask her question. She has a great one. I don't know if we want to pull her up, but maybe
Yeah.
while we get her up to do that, it leads into what, if you could go back to that 14-year-old self right before you kind of went, became professional, is there like advice? Because we also have a lot of other athletes. And I think that the relation of dance, I mean, personally, of what I've learned in the last couple of years, dance is harder than most sports to do it. Is there something that you would have told your younger self, or maybe to walk us through even what your training, like what your day was like, just so
Yeah.
we can get a sense of it now?
I know. So 14, before I really hit professional, I was pretty high up on our examinations. So we would do RID exams. We would do competition as well. And then we would do performances. So we were in the school of the professional ballet company. So I was still performing with that professional ballet company, even at age 7, 8, 9, 10, in their Nutcracker and in their spring show. So one
What's
each
the day
semester.
like walk me through, because I mean, I know a tennis player's day, but like walk me through that
So
14-year-old dancer's day.
fortunately, a dancer's day doesn't have to start crazy early. So that's the good part. I remember my figure skater friends, it was like, you have to be on the ice. What? It's cold at 7 in the morning. So fortunately, it didn't start crazy early, but it did go very late at night. And then I would come home and have honors math homework and just feel lost sometimes. And then, sit in my bed at night and think over all of this choreography, these exams, and these professional shows that I had to do. And that was my process. I would lay in my bed or I'd lay in the bath, and I would, kind of meticulously go through everything I needed, because we didn't have iPhones back then to just kind of like record what we needed. So it literally was books, like exam books and notes. And I'd just sit in bed. And so I would stay up at night and, kind of have a little bit of anxiety of balancing everything, because I did have a desire to, I hate saying be the best, but to be the best. I think you kind of have to have that drive to do so much of, in this athlete world. So I had that drive to know I had to score the highest. I had to get honors distinction on my exams. I had to make sure I had no mistakes. And I even had, we had a ballet mistress, and she, we'd run off stage at the very end of things, and she'd, you know, no mistakes, good girl, no mistakes. We were very like, little puppets, little perfect puppets. And so it was, there was a lot of anxiety and pressure. And then in the same time, I'm going to public school, and all my friends are normal lives and want to hang out, and they're calling my house. Can you come to this on a Saturday morning? No, I can't. And I'm like, I'm pulled in so many different directions, that if I had something like ICL, and I kind of was, had this like community of people that understood, because my friends then would get frustrated. And then when I started dating in high school, he would get frustrated. Well, why do you have this? Why do you have to go to that? Why do you have to have your exam? And so you're pulled in these like so many directions. So I feel like that would have helped so much, just to have that same like network
The community, yeah.
outside of my studio, because of course you're studio friends, but that gets comfortable too. If I see like all these other dancers, and I'm feeling like I'm in a larger community, I think that's so important. And it makes it better for the students when they go to competition, because it's not just like my little studio versus, it's like we're all doing the same thing together. This is hard for everyone, like we're in it together. I think it could help. I really do think ICL could help bridge dancers and the whole community, because yeah, in 3 years and 2 years, when they graduate high school, they're going to go be roommates in NYU, or they're going to go live in LA together and audition together. So I think it can help that community as well, which is amazing.
I promise you that this is not like a plug session for ICL, but like if you heard me with tennis players, skiers, I mean, the issue is that every top competing athlete performer feels that, even if they're getting the accolades and getting the trophies, they're still in this sort of normal setting, like a little bit of a loner, a little bit missing out. And I think that community feel, you probably see it now in your professional career, that the people that you quote unquote competed against when you're young, they're like your brothers in arms. Like
Right.
they're there to support you. I mean, everything that was built out of ICL comes from people that I probably competed against from age 8, on. And but you realize as you're older that this is your tribe. Like these are people that understand you, that have like-mindedness. So it's interesting. So while we talk about the good stuff, I want to bring Fatima up, because she had a really, really good question that we were going to hit on. Fatima, welcome. Where? Give us a little bit. Are you where do you live? Are you a dancer? A little bit about yourself.
Well, actually, I'm a tennis player,
Very
and
nice.
I'm stationed in Boca Raton. So my main question was, what was like the main obstacles that you had to go through to get to be a ballerina and everything like that? So that was just my main one.
I think the hardest obstacle is, and you know this as a tennis player, if you're physically not healthy, you're not performing. So if your mental state is down and you get sick more easily in the winter months, or if you're, I'm sure you're terrified of hurting your knees as a tennis player. We are as ballet dancers too. So there's no skiing. That's the other thing. I could never go skiing with my boyfriend. And, it's like you can't do these things because you're terrified, because it's your instrument.
I started skiing the second I finished my tennis.
Yeah.
I said I want to get up that mountain.
So I always tell that to ballet dancers. Actually, I'm like, okay, tennis players do this warm up for their knees. Like, we're going to do it too. So I actually take a lot from tennis players because we have similar knee issues and they're so sensitive. And I think it just goes back to your whole instrument is your body, and then your mental state can affect that as well. So I think the biggest obstacle is body health and injury prevention. How can I maximize so I'm physically challenging myself, so I'm wowing my audition and I'm like my legs are as high as possible, but in that safe way balance, and I'm not injuring myself. And when we go to these events and we go to some of these, things, and we would go to, like, we would even do performances like opening of a mall, and we would perform outside on this like makeshift stage that was dangerous and like over concrete, and so you're doing all of these things to have more opportunities, but then at the same time you're like, injury prevention, because once you're out, you're down 6 weeks, and then you feel at age 13, 14 you're missing so much. So that's where I think having that community, having that emotional health is so supportive as well, because I even have a lot of students and they get injured and I know they get down because at our studio, then they're sitting on the floor, they're taking notes, they're bummed out that they're not dancing. If they had something like ICL and they still had a community and they still had someone checking in on them, can that help you? Because our mental state really does affect our physical state so much.
So it wasn't the direction I was going to go, but since we do have
Yeah.
a tennis player here in this, I mean, there are such amazing crossovers, but I would probably argue that if you really step back and think about it, the highest compliment to give an athlete is to call them a dancer. So I'm a Roger Federer fanatic. I think that the greatest athletes in the world have all been assigned the label dancer. Roger Federer, when they say what makes him so great, he's a dancer on the court. Michael Jordan is a dancer with a ball. Wayne Gretzky is a dancer on the ice. Muhammad Ali was a dancer in a boxing ring. So I think that there are so many kind of comparables, but yet in a weird way, like dance kind of supersedes it, but it's not necessarily considered like a traditional sport, like an arena sport that you go to. And yet all of that training is the same. And I think it's really, tennis is an individual sport, but in the competition, it's not, because you're competing against somebody and it's kind of a game of questions and answers. You have a shot that someone gives you, you have to respond. Whereas in dance, you're with the group, you sort of have to flow with people, but then you have to perform those incredibly hard moves on your own, but then still fit in. So I just think that I'm very interested in sort of all those, physiological similarities, the mental side, I mean, the emotional side. I mean, when you don't perform, I mean, how do you, in tennis, like there's so much mental, emotional pressure of psyching yourself out. There's an emotional, you have to overcome fear, in points when you're pressure situation. And I'm sure dance, it's like nonstop once you get out there. That, do you get frozen? How do you overcome those barriers of, oh my God, I don't feel it today. Like, how do I do that move? And, will it be right? I mean, is there sort of mental things or emotional things that you work on? Or
Absolutely. And I think everyone kind of finds what works for them. I know a lot of students and peers of mine, some people need that quiet time, they go away like to themselves right before performance. Some people need to not really think about it and just be, more social. And so I think everyone kind of finds what works for them. Some people go sit and listen to their, music they're about to perform with, put the headphones on, get quiet. So I do think it's individual. I know for me, I could, I think you can psych yourself out. So I think as an athlete, if you get too into your head and you're putting too much into that hour before you have to perform, I think you can absolutely psych yourself out. So for me, I needed to like kind of move my body a lot, kind of run around the theater a lot, kind of be in that event place. If I just went and sat and listened to my music over and over, for me, that didn't work. But I have students that works for them. So I think it's learning too. We are so individual as well. And so what works for us, and like, let's support that.
Fatima, that's great. I didn't mean to cut you off. Are there any other questions, or if anyone else, throw in the Q&A and we'll bring you up. But Fatima, thanks for that question. That's huge. That was a great
Thank
one.
you.
Yeah. So I think kind of going forward now, like that entrepreneurial journey, because what we talk about a lot is character building, right? The end results, when you're a parent, you just want to provide the best environment for your child to excel, to reach whatever potential they can get to. But we always say that, as a parent, you just want to have people of great character, right? You want to build. And I think that sports, dance, I mean, all of these elements are providing things that a traditional school doesn't. It's resilience, self-awareness, self-confidence, the discipline of controlling your emotions, your time. Do you think, I guess, how you made that switch into that business world? Were there elements that you could go back and think you would have liked to have started earlier, or are you applying kind of lessons from earlier into creating your own business? Because as you said, contract spaces, I mean, this is stuff that you don't think about when you're younger, and no one really prepares you for what.
Right. And so a lot of that I just learned on my own, and it would have been so helpful to have that earlier. I mean, decades earlier, just to start, because you do want to think about it like that. What is life post the kind of short career you may have? And do you want to stay in that career and grow it into a business and start a business and start something on your own? I would have loved to have that knowledge earlier. I do think having the confidence that I did helped me start that business, because I had so much confidence as a performer and as a teacher that I was like, yeah, this is going to work because I'm going to do it. And I've done it before in other things. So that part of, our athletic career can really help support us. But if I had just a little earlier, the knowledge of, the mentorship, the knowledge of, okay, this is what, and it would have been a little quicker as far as the learning curve. But I'm very grateful that I had the confidence in my career, because that gave me the impetus to just push and go for it.
Which is amazing. And I guess that's shifting to now. I mean, to do so talk a little about these, icon and, kind of awards, what your goals are for this, and how people can be involved, or what you really wanted to achieve in starting this thing that didn't exist before.
Yeah, so we want to make our events focused on the individual athlete, but also realizing that in dance, it's really a hybrid, because you dance on your own a lot. You may have this solo, this variation, but you also dance as an ensemble in a group. So it's kind of like tennis or figure skating, where you may be singles, you may be pairs, and it's having both at this event. So it is important to be on your own and to have that drive and to compete your solo, your variation on your own. But we're going to get together and do this choreography as a group. We're going to perform at the end. And what we really want, what our goal is to push the end gala. We want to make it where the community comes out. So that's why we're bringing in this year professional companies that are going to perform with the kids. We're bringing professional musicians, and we want to create kind of in that community of every city we go to. I want artists, patrons who may not have a student participating that weekend, but they want to come see the end show. So really, really it's laying the path for that student, like, this is what a professional career actually looks like. You aren't just going to compete on your own and that's it. You're going to be in this whole show. It's going to have this feel. And yes, we love competition, for our drive and winning a trophy and winning a scholarship, because that is important. And it is a huge facet of our, kind of training. But you also need this knowledge of, okay, but this is what a career is actually like. We don't have an Olympics in dance, so we don't go on to be professional competitors. In a way, we actually go on to be, that's where dance gets very interesting. It's kind of a gray area, because we go on to be entertainers and you're selling tickets. And so it kind of is, it is so important to teach that to a child, that it's not just like gymnastics where you stuck your landing and you win this award.
Yeah.
You have to figure out, how do I train physically for my body to do the moves correctly, but also how do I train as an actress to sell the character? How do I train as an artist to use my whole space to draw in the audience so they're excited to watch me? So we feel like that's where Icon's a little unique, because we're pushing this closing gala and we're showing how important it is for that artistic and that entertainer side, because you do, as a dancer, you need to sell tickets, you need to sell, say you're in a commercial and selling a product. So it is about that plus the athleticism. So it becomes this kind of cool gray area, and this huge career. Like I said, you can dance for decades, which is amazing. But with that, you need so much nurturing and support. You can't just be screamed at and perform a solo on your own. Well, you have to have this whole other side, and I know you need to be nurtured into it.
So it's so amazing, and I wish there were more discussions. And hopefully, what we can do is bring, a round table of athletes. You had said when you grew up in Dallas, and you hear from even the professional basketball players. We mentioned Dirk Nowitzki from Dallas. It's like, yes, he's a basketball player, but he even understands, like, you drive ticket sale, like that. At some point, there's always that element of, there's a business side to it. There is a deeper life meaning. I mean, character building is something that is sort of loosely termed, and this is sort of a side discussion, but that's social emotional learning, that some of the greatest life lessons are, it's not your physical, but just the fact that you said you started traveling by yourself at age 12. That was my marker too, like going, it wasn't like, wow, you've been selected because of your ability, but now we expect you to be a mature adult, and maybe you weren't,
Very soon.
my ability is
Yeah.
showing I can compete with other adults that are at a different age range than I am, but am I ready to get on that plane, manage my own money, sort out of, like you're kind of thrown into the wild. And so I guess in today's world, sports are becoming a little bit more like dance. You started getting paid as a professional earlier, and usually the athlete has college, and now all of a sudden younger athletes, I mean, it's going to get more intense across the board for younger athletes, which means that families that that want to go into a profession earlier, you that's a main focus super young. And I don't know a different bit whether that's healthy or not, but
Right.
I think that finding that balance, and now that you're older, I mean, striking that balance. Maybe there are parents here who are wondering, because it is always, how much do you push, how much, because what it takes, but you also know that you can't, like, burn out. Is there anything, I mean, I guess, how did you find that balance? I mean, you talked about your inner drive, but was there ever a time, that you felt, I don't want to do this, or I don't know. How did you find that inner
Oh
drive?
yeah, there's times where you feel burnt out, or you feel this, in your 20s, and your friends start getting married young and they have these cute jobs and they're free all weekend, and then you're missing weddings and you're missing baby showers, and so you have that. And it comes just back to balance, make sure I'm making time for friends, make sure I'm making time for family, and I'm doing things that are, I hate using the word normal, but doing things that are not dance related and that are, opening a different side for me. So I think that's important for our student athletes as well. Are you making time for, this kind of balance of your life, so we don't get burnt out and we can have longevity? I think something crazy for the kids today is they have this whole social media side. So they're having to brand themselves at such a young age, which we did not have to do. They're having to, create logos and create this online look for themselves. And that opens up a whole new thing. And good or bad, it's here to stay. And it can help, it can hurt as well. But if we look at it just as another tool, and if we, get that maturity, not just physically mature as far as, like, athletic performing, but if we can help them emotionally get that maturity, how do you have this online presence and still staying safe and still not, maybe you have an ugly comment, and making sure, like, you talk to a parent about that. I had this comment on my social media. So, there's this whole new world too for our kids, which is great because they can brand themselves and get noticed by maybe get a brand deal because of their social media presence. But then what does it bring as well? So I think it's just looking at these new tools in a positive way, but also realizing, yeah, we need to get in front of them as far as
There's a whole
emotional
education about it. I mean,
maturity.
I,
Yeah.
I think that education is so important. And again, it's like, who does that fall under? Like, is it your responsibility as running a dance sort of instructional? Is it the school's responsibility, family?
Right.
I think the answer is it's all of the above. I think you have to have a joint effort. And what we want to try to do with ICL is to sort of free up that time, because you do want to have a sense of normalcy. I think when you talked about to Fatima, like recovery, we know more now that recovery and prehab is, almost more important than your actual training time, like making
Right.
sure that you're preparing. And I mean, I look back at my training going to regular school, like the bell would ring at like 3:30. I was supposed to be on the court by 4:30, but I didn't eat. So whatever you can shove in your mouth. And now we
Right.
know body, that before you get out there, stretching, prepping mentally, you have to treat yourself. And I guess dance, you were lucky that you were professional so young, but in other sports nowadays, you have to, starting at 12, 13, copy what the pros do, but then you have this big thing that's school and hours and time. So
Right.
it's a little crazy. So
It is. And I do believe that teenagers need a lot more sleep than they're getting. They've done studies about that and that's where I think ICL would have been really good for me, because there were times where I was professionally dancing the show. I lived in North Dallas. The show was in Fort Worth. So it was over an hour away. It finishes by 9:30, but by the time you take your costume off and you go to this and you take your makeup off and you get to the car, and I just got my license and I'm driving it, not a good driver at 16, and I'm trying to drive home on the highway, and I think by the time I got home, you're just so maxed out. And then if you're getting up early to go to that normal school, you're not getting enough sleep for your body to reset and for your body to feel good. And so I think that's where ICL would be great. And I can kind of structure my own time if I have, these moments of performing, and I can get more rest and treat my body well because it is my instrument. Oh, so I'm very envious.
well, I appreciate that. I know we're almost coming to the hour. I want to make sure that everyone get some questions in. I mean, we only had Fatima. Do we have other people here? I know that so many of the dancers are dancing now, would probably have a lot of questions. So we're gonna have to definitely do this again. I mean, I see
Yeah.
some names out here of a lot of tennis players, and I want to reiterate like how the mental side. I think the greatest compliment to the world of dance is just that I think every coach I've had, from soccer to tennis to any sport I've done, it's always like, be a dancer. I mean, you feel like there's something amazing, and I think it alludes to body control and
Yeah.
body awareness.
It's
I think,
magical. There's a little bit of magic in it. It's pretty cool.
yeah, it's so great. I mean, you wish you could go live a couple different lifetimes and train and pursue other things. And yeah, does anyone have any more questions? I feel like, I mean, we have people here, but I think the crossover too of having dancers see, again, tennis, for example, or vice versa, because we do have dancers in school, like there's a different mindset. I remember my coach actually making me go to Swan Lake, and your first instinct is like, I'm watching a bunch of people do ballet, and then he said, remember what we're working on with our hips, like for tennis it's like crouching, bending down, ready position. Look at that, like look at
Yeah.
what they're doing. I remember living with two NFL linebackers, and they were sent to the Alvin Ailey dance school in
Yeah.
preseason, and they said they'd never been as exhausted, that their on the field workouts were nothing compared to when
Yeah.
they got in the dance studio. So I think there is a lot of interesting crossover, that helps in anything, because in life, dance is also something that taps into emotional, and, like as you said, I mean, being in music videos, acting, performing, running a business, it's tough. I mean, I think you were trained in a different way. I know it's very tough for some athletes I know that are pro basketball players or tennis players to then get in front of a camera or
Yeah.
have that training, because it seems like you, while you were working on your body, you also had that kind of communications. You said you were having to sell, to communicate in different ways and feel comfortable in front of those audiences very young. It's huge. Well, that's awesome. Well, if I don't know if there are any other questions. I had a question. So you mentioned was your
Yeah.
husband was an athlete as well. What sport did he play?
So he, when he was really young, loved soccer and then played football. I mean, West Texas, played football.
There we go.
Played
Well,
baseball, really good baseball player.
our ICL kids here that are on probably heard last year from James Vanderbeek, who played in Varsity Blues, QB1. So we know
Yeah.
West Texas.
That's it. Friday Night Lights.
Exactly. This is so exciting. We look forward to supporting, and building a great community and great relationship. And thank you so much for kind of kicking off. We've had Valentin on it, and hearing the different parts of dance coming from different perspectives. Val talked about moving from Ukraine when he was 6, and maybe different for a male as well back then, getting into ballroom, what you faced, and just hearing those lessons, but building that confidence. There's so much that dance provides you that all athletes. So congratulations. We're here to support Icon and what you're doing, and just in this brief conversation, I mean, I want to sign my kids up for sure. So
well, thank you so much. Yeah, we want to support ICL. Just incredible program.
Well, vice versa. It's great to have you as a champion, and congrats on what you do. And we look forward to seeing you live in person now that we actually can meet up. So you're primarily based where? You're in Gibble, yeah.
Yeah, we're Southern California. So we have 3 California cities. We have San Francisco, San Diego, and then Orange County that we go to in the spring. We go to Dallas and Chicago, Orlando, Phoenix, Salt Lake City, and then in Connecticut, kind of our tri-state area. So we're all over, but we're based in California.
All right.